All right. Hey there, guys. This is going to be Chapter 15, Evolution. This is our third major unit in the second semester, and this is going to be video 2. We're going to talk now about all of the conclusions that Darwin came to after he put together all this information that he gathered. So the first video, we talked a lot about some of the scientists that Darwin based some of his information off of, and also his findings, what his journey to the Galapagos was like. And now we're going to talk about what conclusions he came to. So we can start there with your very first note. Okay. It says Darwin's conclusions. Okay. The species that he found in the Galapagos were all very similar to each other. For example, he saw tortoises on all the different islands, but their shells were shaped differently. So he could tell that they had, some of them had different legs, different necks, different musculature in their necks. So he could tell that they were different species, but there was so much about them that was similar. And there were lots of other animals that were the same way. So he was trying to find a way to explain how this happened, how they could have so much in common, live so close to each other, but still be so different. His book was called On the Origin of Species, and he didn't publish it for a really long time. All those pictures you see of Darwin with the big, long, scraggly beard, those are from after he published On the Origin of Species. And he came back from his journey. His journey took almost 5 years in 1836, but that book didn't come out until 1859. He kept it hidden, and that was because he knew he had to do some more research, and also he knew that his findings would be very radical. He was a religious man, and he knew that a lot of the conclusions that he came to went against some of the teachings that were going on in religion at the time. It wasn't that no one had been talking about evolution or talking about, geologic time taking millions of years. It was more, he realized that his conclusions would definitely be very radical. So he was holding back until he had gathered all the information he could. He finally published it when another scientist sent an essay to him that was very similar to his theory on natural selection. And so they jointly published The Origin of Species together, although most of it's credited to Darwin. So Darwin definitely was not trying to go against religion or go against the church. He was just publishing the data that he found when he studied the different organisms in the Galapagos. Okay, now what we're going to go through here, you guys, is a lot of different vocabulary words. Several of the definitions sound similar. I just wanted to walk you through these because these are some of the words that you're going to see on your test, see in your quizzes. But several of them sound the same. And so you're going to see on some of these vocabulary words, you're going to, you probably know what inherited means, and you guys know what variation means, but there's a lot of different ways that we can say that. So we're going to walk through these, okay? First thing, just before you even look at the definition, inherited means that something that was passed down from generation to generation. And then variation, variety, okay? So inherited variation, in order to get different genes, they have to be passed down from generation to generation. And that's the first thing that you guys have to remember right now. None of this evolution stuff happens in an individual organism, okay? It happens in huge populations at a time. So whatever traits you have, those are the traits that are going to get passed down to your offspring. And the only way that we would see a change is if there was a mutation between you and your offspring. All right, artificial selection, my favorite. Not natural selection, artificial selection. So think artificial means fake, and then selection, to pick. Artificial selection is where we breed what we want into animals. And Darwin used this to help him form his theory of natural selection, because he could see that we could breed animals like dogs and cats and farm animals, and we could breed them with the traits that we wanted them to have. So why couldn't nature do the same thing? So artificial selection is where nature's not choosing the traits, we are. So think domestic dogs. We don't breed dogs based on how they're going to survive in the wild. Think about a Chihuahua. A Chihuahua does not have traits that are going to allow it to survive in the wild. It's something that we chose so that it could be a domesticated dog. Farm animals, think the big black and white cows, the big dairy cows that make your milk. Not something that you would find just kind of roaming randomly in the wild. We have bred them to be that way. So his idea was, why can't nature do that same thing? Why can't nature choose the traits that are going to be the most successful or make that organism the most fit to live in the environment? All right, here's my little artificial selection comic. You guys can see this little pug in the middle. And it says, "Stop the tour bus, where's my snuggums?" It says, "Artificial selection meets natural selection on the African plains." Obviously, the pug not bred to live out in the wild, and you can see all these animals chosen by natural selection with the kind of traits that are going to allow them to survive in the wild. Okay, pugs adorable. Who doesn't love them? Probably wouldn't survive in the wild. Okay, struggle of or for existence is the idea that all organisms are competing for resources on a regular basis. As long as we have a certain population in an area, there's only a certain amount of food, water, space that they're going to be able to survive on. So everybody, everything is competing for resources. And this idea that living things are struggling to exist, to survive, even humans, was something that Thomas Malthus talked about in that first video we were talking about. He was one of the scientists that Darwin based his theory around. And Darwin took that and said, well, why isn't that must be happening in nature too? In nature, animals are struggling to survive, and we know that. How do they survive? And then how are traits passed down from the ones that do survive? Fitness. Okay, fitness, don't think like I'm going to the gym working on my fitness. Fitness is, do you have the right traits to survive and to reproduce? Fitness doesn't always mean big and strong and fast. It means whatever is best for that environment. Okay. The ability for an individual to survive and reproduce in its environment. If you're living in an environment that has really limited food resources, maybe something that's a smaller organism would survive more than a big one. Okay. So don't think that fit always means bigger and badder. Fit means whoever's best for that space, that time, and what's going on in that in that span of nature at that time. Okay. Whoever's most fit gets to survive and gets to make babies. So to be fit, number one, you got to have what you need to survive. And number two, you got to make some babies so you can pass on that fitness to your babies. An adaptation. Right now, the word adaptation, I know that you guys think of that as changing, as well, you know, I walk into a class and I adapt to the rules of that classroom, or I adapt to a new environment. That's not how it works in evolution. In evolution, you inherit adaptations from your parents. Okay, so we consider an adaptation a trait that you got from your parents, and an adaptation would be one that helps to increase your chance of surviving. So if you're a cheetah and you inherit really fast cheetah muscles and legs from your parents, you've inherited that adaptation. If you're a cheetah who inherited like really teeny tiny short legs and not very big muscles, not a very good adaptation. Okay, so these are things that we inherit from our parents that help us to survive. Think any kind of camouflage, okay? Fawns, okay? Little baby deer, they have little teeny tiny spots. That's an adaptation that they inherit from their parents so that they can blend in with the grass around them so they can't be killed by predators, okay? Right now, remember, you are born with your adaptations, okay? Number 22 on your sheet just asks you to write down some other adaptations. So if you guys could just brainstorm a few other ones that you can think of in animals that help them to survive, we can talk about it in class. Okay, almost done here. Now the big one, survival of the fittest. After all the stuff that we've already talked about, this is the kind of big conclusion that Darwin came to. Survival of the fittest. Whoever is the most fit survives. Whoever's got the best adaptation survives and then has a chance to pass them down. If you don't pass them down, you're not the fittest. So being the fittest, again, doesn't always mean bigger and badder and faster and stronger. It's all about what's going on in your environment right now. Okay, whoever's fittest gets to survive and gets to make babies. And that leads us to Darwin's biggest part of his theory, natural selection. Mutations provide the different adaptations, and then nature selects those who get to survive. It's not like your environment is out there picking the fastest cheetah or the strongest rhino. Nature provides the environment, and living things provide the adaptations. If you've got the right adaptations, you survive. If you don't, you die, and then you can't pass down your genes. Now, this is why populations change over time, not individuals. Okay, you guys. Populations, a whole herd of deer over millions of years changes, not individual populations. So think about those different islands in the Galapagos. On one island, you might have a tortoise that needs longer legs because it has to reach up and grab food off of a vine. That change happened over millions of years in that one population, and that's why that one population on that one island is different from, say, the tortoises on another island.